Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Codd, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show.
To me, I think that's the most critical thing. And as I look for people coming into my FP&A organization, that's one of the key things that I focus on is, are you comfortable working in an environment where not everything is known? We have to make assumptions. We have to do analyses where we want a set of information and insights that may not fully exist. So how can we take what we have and make very clear, logical assumptions about that, and then apply that and come up with an opinion that we can use to share with our business partners.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Strength in the Numbers. Now you've just heard from Gaileon Thompson, our guest mentor this week, and Gaileon has held a number of finance VP, senior VP and group VP roles across the financial services and health solutions sectors, and is also currently serving on the board of directors for the Association of Finance Professionals. And it was fantastic having Gaileon on the show, because Gaileon helped us deconstruct some key areas that a lot of fellow finance professionals have questions around, particularly how we should be responding to failure, and I think her point about getting comfortable around the grey, or being comfortable with the uncomfortable because of the things we have to do and what people expect us to do, is a very important trait to have today in team members. But it also allows us to be a bit more strategic, as well as what Gaileon sort of shares from her own experience, help us better prepare for roles we might decide to take on outside of finance. And Gaileon recounts some of her experiences in doing that. And then we come back into finance and talk about some of the skills and how to develop them, and steps we could take to also walk in the trenches with our business partners, particularly if we're in the area of FP&A and business partnering. And also, we sort of end our conversation around talking about how we can better leverage the wider finance community and use that as a safe space to ask these questions so we all learn and grow. So look, I really enjoyed the conversation with Gaileon. Her passion comes through in terms of how we can help our profession learn and grow. Now, if you enjoyed the episode, you can do a few things. You can check out the timestamp show notes, key quotes, resources, and ways to connect with Gaileon at SITNshow.com. And you can also let your friends and colleagues know we always appreciate when we have new listeners subscribe to the Strength in the Numbers podcast, and they can do that on all the major platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube and Spotify. That's enough for me, and without further ado, over to Gaileon and the show. So Gaileon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And it's our pleasure to have you on the show today, Gaileon. And look, thank you for making the time. And there was actually a former guest mentor on the show recommended, we should bring you on and share you with our audience. So before we get into the main part, would you mind maybe sharing with us a brief story of your journey in accounting and finance, please?
Certainly. I've been in this space, I would say 17 years total. But the one thing I would say about my career looking back is that I've always been a finance person at heart. This has always been my passion. But when I look at how my career has evolved, it's been a bit of a journey where I periodically will step outside of a finance role and go into vendor management or product management or technology. So in some respects, I feel like it's a fairly untraditional approach. But the other hand, I also feel like that's more of the future, especially in my area of expertise, which is FP&A, where having that diversity of experience, diversity of thought, having stepped out of finance and walked a mile in the shoes of our product partners and our vendor management partners, I think really helps bring a new perspective that is very refreshing and very welcome to the business partners that we support. So again, very atypical in some respects, but I think probably what's going to be more of something we see going forward in our profession.
And I suppose for some of our audience listening and thinking about, okay, there might be an opportunity here to take a non-finance sort of traditional role. I mean, what would you sort of maybe advise them? Maybe that it might be looked at being not very strategic, if you know what I mean. Like, it's like, okay, how does that fit in? It looks a bit like a pinball in a pinball machine. You're bouncing to different things outside of finance. When they're perhaps sort of looking to pursue a career in finance. I mean, I get what you're saying, but some of our audience might be a bit nervous about that. So how do you help them maybe rationalize the right decision they need to make there?
So I would start by saying absolutely consider it. Not necessarily absolutely take it, but absolutely give it some thought. And the way that I've approached it, and again, I've never necessarily sought out those opportunities to step outside. It was more a function of I was in a finance role. I was doing a good job. I was demonstrating that I could get my head up out of my laptop and interact with the business and understand what's going on from a strategic perspective. So then as opportunities were opening up outside of finance, I was the first person that came to mind because I had demonstrated that I could operate and manage at that strategic level. And as those opportunities would come to bear, the very first thing I would think of is, what's the value that I have to give back to the organization? And is that something that I could be successful in delivering that value back? And in multiple instances, after thinking through it, I came to that conclusion. Yes, I think this, not only do I have some skills and value that I can add, but this is a personal development opportunity for me as well. So I think that's something that people should think through. And the thing that I would also encourage folks to keep in mind is that it's okay to be uncomfortable. And you know, a number of the roles that I've gone into, I would say to myself, I've never done this before. And it's okay to come in and to ask questions. And it's going to be okay to make mistakes. And that's actually one of the things that I've had to grapple with, is that I have such a high bar, a high expectation for myself, that it's okay to not be perfect, especially on, you know, your first month in this new role in a new part of the business that you've not worked in before. But I think as long as people do not let that sense of being uncomfortable turn into paralysis, and if you can push through that and find ways where you can grow professionally and see where you've got that benefit that you can give back, I would absolutely go running towards those opportunities.
Yeah, but I think you did a great job explaining how you qualify them first to see, and testing said, do you think I could add value in those, or contribute value, in those? And I think another really important point is it's okay to make mistakes. You know, you're not alone in finance. We all have very high bars of being accurate and making sure what we say is consistent and develop that credibility. But for those of us who do find in those uncomfortable scenarios, like, is there any sort of advice on how you overcome that potential paralysis of being frightened to ask questions or make mistakes or even take the next step, whatever direction that is?
I think the thing that's really important to keep in mind, and to be honest, I struggle with this personally, and I have to keep reminding myself of it, is that it's okay to fail. It's okay to make a mistake. And generally speaking, people don't get fired for making mistakes. They get fired for how they respond to them, or they get fired for making the same mistake over and over and over. And so the way that I try to position it is that I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid mistakes, to, you know, hit that high level of expectation that I've set for myself. And when I fall short, understand why, you know, what could I have done differently, apply that going forward and make sure that doesn't happen again. And if anything, that can turn into an asset for you, because if people see, you know, something happened, it wasn't ideal, and you were able to learn, course correct, build upon it, and then excel, I think that just shows resiliency, and that you're in it, and you're in the trenches with folks, and you're not going to give up. So as long as you are willing to learn, and with that, sometimes a little bit of humility can help. Just apply that going forward, then it's okay. So, and I think that's the whole thing. It's okay as long as you have the right response to it.
I'd say that's a great way of looking at it, because, like, you know, this challenge or whatever we're confronted with in our careers, whatever's thrown at us, it could end up being the best story or best experience we've ever had, and it could make a great story, you know, down the line that we could share with others about how we developed our resiliency. It's I was just trying to think, even in an interview, I'd be fascinated to hear about someone's story, how they overcame a challenge and what they did and how they responded and picked themselves up. And I suppose in terms of your career, Gaileon, like, look, you've done some fantastic roles, but I guess in terms of your mind, what perhaps has been one of the more memorable experience, if you could share one of those with our audience, please.
When I look back over my career, and this is actually an example of being outside of finance, so I hope that's okay in this finance-oriented podcast. But I had been promoted into a role as the head of product management for a very strategic product set within my company. And we were going down the path of a pretty significant product change that was going to have some very mixed reactions with our customers. And part of our business case anticipated the fact that we were going to lose some customers as a result. Oh. When we were looking at the data, it was, largely unprofitable customers that we would be losing. And, they were given different options to address our product changes. But at the end of the day, we knew we would lose some customers. And we socialized the business case, we socialized the strategy, and we had executive buy-in and support, all the way up and down through the organization. And so we were able to proceed. As we started to move into execution mode, I was thinking to myself, everyone says they're okay with account closures and with losing some accounts. But once it hits the fan, there's going to be collective corporate amnesia, and it's going to go out of control. So I worked with our marketing team in analytics and basically said, we're going to define the criteria of those accounts that we think are going to be at risk. Let's flag them. And we're going to monitor them. And then as we do start to see these account closures, I want to be able to go back and report how many of those closures were in that population where we said it was okay, where they were, negative profitability to us. And actually, in the long run, we're better off. So fast forward, we're about 6 weeks into the new product changes, and our accounts are tanking. We're shedding accounts left and right.
Oh, no.
And as I predicted, the executive feedback was, oh my gosh, what have we done? Yeah. And thankfully, I was able to show, before they had this kind of aha moment, every single week I'm reporting out, these are the accounts that we closed. Here's the collective net loss that we just avoided by these accounts walking out the door. And because we were proactive and because we were able to share this information starting with the very first week, every single week when we saw those account closures come in, I was immediately able to back it up with, and this is the loss that we just avoided. And as a result, even though I think a lot of people were very uncomfortable, because you're in a sales organization, you want to see those numbers going up, not down. But because we have the foresight and the data to reinforce and prove this is going exactly as planned, don't lose the faith, we're going to keep going. And more importantly, if things do start to go in the wrong direction, we're going to find out about it in real time, and we'll be able to step in and course correct. And again, because we had that foresight and we were able to anticipate our business partners' anxiety, their angst and concerns, we were able to stay the course. And once we got through that whole product conversion, it was actually revered as one of the best successes that we had because we were able to effectively increase the profitability of our portfolio, minimize, the client impact in terms of those that stayed with us, and we were able to demonstrate that, those accounts that we no longer had were actually part of what we had intended all along. And so, to me, I often think of our role in finance as, looking at a chessboard. Every decision that we make, whether it's a procedural, how are we going to approach our budget this year, or a strategic, how are we going to deal with this particular challenge or a situation in our business, every immediate decision we make, there's going to be a next step. And the more that we can be thinking about those next steps and anticipating what we need to do and how we need to prepare our partners, the more successful we're going to be.
And by the way, I love that analogy of the chessboard. I'm just sort of trying to pull out some of the key words you said there. And one you dropped in there, Gaileon, was foresight. Because I think we read a lot and hear a lot about how what we do is give I meant to give great insights and develop influence. But I suppose, that's great. It's great having insights. But if no one does anything with them, then what value are they? But if you've got foresight, and it's sort of predictable and reliable, and as you were sort of saying, you're calling out these accounts that that are you're losing customers, and these accounts were sort of expected, and therefore it's okay, we're losing accounts, but actually it's good for the business. It's positions us much more strongly. We're going to have more profitability because we're losing less money. Is that what finance professionals need to be looking to be better at? Is that foresight, that ability to identify the next step, and sort of be there and help our business partners on the journey on those next steps? Is that really where finance is going in your mind?
Absolutely. And I don't think it's because it's a nice thing, or because I think of it more in terms of we need to go in that direction.
Need to. Okay.
We need to, because it's for the survival of our profession. If you think about what finance looked like 20 years ago, we were, as professionals, we were known for our heads being buried in our computers, cranking out our Lotus Note spreadsheets, and give me an input and I'll give you an output all day long. But it was a very transactional way of supporting the business. And when you look at how the world has globalized, how automation has come in, and the leaps and bounds that we've seen in technology, a lot of those transactional services that we were providing are now automated with the click of a button, or they're being pushed to lower cost locations to be done at a fraction of the cost that we might be able to do in our home countries. Yeah. And so as we see that transformation taking place, it doesn't mean that the role of finance is just going to be automated. It just means that we have to go moving further along that curve and adding more value, getting more face time in front of our business partners, and actually being in the trenches with them, because it's that type of partnership that you can't automate, that you can't necessarily move to another location. So for us, if you want to survive in this profession, which I think is an amazing and exciting profession, we have to get all of our colleagues to start moving more along that spectrum where we become that indispensable partner, where if our business partner gets called into the CEO's office, the first thing they do is come by and grab you by the shoulder and say, you're coming with me because we're in this together. And to me, that's where we really all need to be striving towards, to be that indispensable business partner. And to me, that's a big distinction between finance partner, because it's one thing for them to come to you and want to understand the impact to my financials, or what's my forecast looking like. But when they start coming to you and asking you strategic questions about the business that has no immediate impact to your numbers, I think that's when you've crossed the bridge into the promised land, where you are truly an advisor to them on all things, not just finance. And I think that is exactly what we should be striving for, especially from an FP&A perspective.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, I think FP&A and finance business partnering started sprouting up as terms like in the sort of the 1960s, 1970s, and we're using them much more nowadays. But have we really, I mean, I'm sort of sensing from what you're saying, actually, should we be moving beyond FP&A, beyond finance partnering, and be the sort of business advisor you're suggesting? Should we be looking to call ourselves something different?
I've been in a number of roundtable discussions where that very topic has come up. And in fact, one of the debates is, should we be financial planning and analysis, or business planning and analysis? Business planning
analysis, yeah.
And this is where I think, especially with the rise in the technology tools that we have, those lines do get very, very blurred. And a lot of companies today are standing up business analysis teams where those are the teams managing the data lakes and starting to implement artificial intelligence and tools like that. And I think that there's definitely a blurring of the lines, and different industries, different companies are going to draw those boundaries very differently, where one organization may pull more of those analytics into the CFO world, and then there's others where that may fall more on the operations side. And I think a lot of it has to do with how the company is structured, their strategic priorities, and then sometimes just where you've got the raw skill set and the thirst for knowledge to help promote and drive those types of analyses forward.
Actually, you mentioned skill set there. I just had this image in my head when business partners walking towards the CEO's office and they're grabbing you on the shoulder and pulling you along with them to be in the trenches with them. I suppose, that takes a different skill set to sitting at our desks in front of, by the way, thanks for reminding us of how old I am. Lotus 123. I've had the privilege as well of using those spreadsheets. I don't even know if they're around anymore, but
I don't know either.
But just saying, like, I suppose that's a different skill set to the one that has to go and be in the trenches with them. So I suppose where should we be looking to evolve our skills to be more effective at that for our business partners?
To me, a lot of it is focusing on the softer skills of the way we interact and engage with our partners, a lot of emotional intelligence and building personal connections. Mm-hmm. I also think that we've got to be comfortable working in the gray. Mm. And I think that's a mindset and a skill that some people have and is very innate. I'd like to think that it's something people can learn, although I think it just kind of depends on how open-minded folks can be. But really, the more that I think it's that fundamental shift of getting out of the black and white and into being comfortable working in that gray area. To me, I think that's the most critical thing. And as I look for people coming into my FP&A organization, that's one of the key things that I focus on is, are you comfortable working in an environment where not everything is known? We have to make assumptions. We have to do analyses where we want a set of information and insights that may not fully exist. So how can we take what we have and make very clear, logical assumptions about that, and then apply that and come up with an opinion that we can use to share with our business partners. And so for me, if you're able to hone that skill, and sometimes I think that can even be more contagious, where if you have a team, starting to infuse your team with some people that are able to think like that, then I think that's something that can start to spread and help folks get more comfortable working in that space. And then that's, I think, where we become better positioned to become that advisor, that person that no one wants to, go into that CEO room without. Because, because a lot of, because if you think about it, our business leaders have to deal with that all the time. And they're constantly having to deal with unknowns. And so having someone at their side that is fully engaged, fully in the trenches with them, dealing with those unknowns together, to me is invaluable.
I completely agree with you. And I also want to believe that this ability to embrace the grey is something we can learn, because I'm just fearful if we don't, then some of us are left behind. But I do think there's still a lot of people in our profession, in our community, who still like that there's a large element of black and white about what we do. And in fact, sometimes even our business partners look to us for that black and white, just tell them how it is, because, they want to know what the real picture is as well, to cut through all the grey. So, I mean,
exactly.
Is there any sort of words of encouragement we can say to people who are very comfortable being black and white about things? How can they fit in, in this environment of increasing grayness, I guess, blurring at the lines?
Well, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think it's being comfortable being uncomfortable, and realizing that there's an area we're going to have to step into, and we don't have that crutch or that safety net of, I have all of my data and I can reconcile it down to the penny, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, this is exactly what the answer is. The fact that there's going to be times where we're not going to get down to that level of precision, and that's okay. Just recognizing some people may be very uncomfortable, but don't let that, lack of comfort turn into paralysis or keep you from stretching and trying. And from what I found is that in any aspect of our profession, the more you do things where you feel uncomfortable, the next time you do it, it becomes a little bit more familiar. And that level of uncomfort is not quite as extreme. And over time, it starts to go down. And before you know it, you're living in that space, and you wonder what the heck you were worked up about in the first place. So I think you just have to be, it's okay to be uncomfortable is, again, something that I've just really tried to live my life by.
Yeah, but it's okay because you've gone through that journey. I just think some of our audience might be just embarking on it, and it's just like, after a while you won't even really notice it as much. But it's a big, because it is for some people a mindset shift. And I was just thinking there, Gaileon, like when I was doing my accounting exams, it was always about getting things to balance and trial balance, and things had to be in their right place, so it was very black and white. No one ever mentioned the word directional to me, it's like, it's like this holy grail of, no, like that word did not appear on one exam paper, I'm pretty sure. That's you know.
Yes,
So
and especially in this day and age, the word directional becomes your favorite. It's your best
yeah,
friend.
it's like someone's asked you for advice, you just know you can't give them a black and white answer. It's, well, it depends, but directionally, you should
Exactly.
do, yeah, yeah. So at least we can laugh about it. If we're still around to tell the tale. So I'm pretty sure others can make the leap too. But I mean, look, but I seriously really appreciate the great advice you've been sharing with us. But I suppose in terms of yourself, what's been the best bit of advice you've ever received?
The things that helped propel me in my career is just having been fortunate to have a lot of great managers and mentors that really just believed that I had what it took to get to the next level, regardless if it was in or outside of finance. And I think there were a number of instances where, again, going back to what we first talked about at the top of our discussion, when that first opportunity came to me that was outside of finance, and my immediate reaction was, that's not what I do. And I was very quick to initially say, I don't know if that's the right thing for me because it's not, I'm in finance. That's not a finance role. But having people, really talk to me about, well, you'd be really great at this. This is the skills that you bring. This is what we're looking for. And again, it's okay to come in and to do something different. Ask the questions, and we're here to help you. I think having that kind of support network has been really helpful. So and just knowing that I've got people that I can turn to along the way to ask guidance or counsel in terms of how to address certain situations and so forth. So it's probably a series of just a ton of small tips and tricks along the way that have really made a difference, even though I can't think of just one overarching phrase or words of wisdom that would kind of encapsulate all of that.
Yeah, well, I'm sort of hoping. I do get what you're saying, Gaileon, and I think some of our listeners will as well. It's that, I think for anyone who feels like they've had a good career and enjoyed their career, that they, I think it's not something we've done on our own. We've had a lot of help and nudges along the way, little tips and tricks that we've picked up from others that we wouldn't have had the experiences without. And I was just sort of thinking, it'd be great to think in a number of years' time is that if we got another guest mentor on the show and we asked, what's your best bit of advice? And I said, well, actually, it's all the tips and tricks the other guest mentors on the show have been giving me over the last number of years. then I think that'd be great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and this is just, if I may for a second do a quick little sidebar here. I realize that you may have some listeners that are thinking to themselves, I've never had a good boss, or I don't have that, hopefully that's a very, very small number. But I get that, not everybody is blessed with, strategic, employee empowering mentors and managers. Exactly. And this is where I think our profession could be doing a lot better. Yeah. And that is building a sense of community within finance and accounting. If you think about it, I think our roles are the people that gravitate to these roles tend to be thought of as introverts. Again, we're behind our computers, cranking away on our spreadsheets all day. And the more that we can step out of that, not just in our day-to-day jobs with our business partners and our companies, but with each other. And looking for opportunities to connect online with groups on LinkedIn, in local groups in your city for FP&A roundtables or, finance and accounting lunch and learns and things like that. The more we can build that connectivity and that sense of community amongst ourselves, you're able to augment with whatever you do or don't get through your management ranks or your company network. So I think that's one of the things that I've been really pleased to see over the last few years is how, through the help of LinkedIn and conferences dedicated to our industry, there is this groundswell of community that, today I've got so many people that I could reach out to, if I want to get some advice or some guidance or just bounce some ideas off of that 5 years ago, I don't think I felt like I had. So to that end, I would encourage everyone listening to this, look for those ways to get involved and to build your own personal network and your own personal community, because when you combine that with the support and help that you get through your professional network and your company, you can be unstoppable.
Wow. I mean, I'm the only thing I'd say there, Galen, is that's definitely not a sidebar. I think that's quite a key number of points you raise. I think the importance of community. I would say, like, as been an observer, and again, that's what Strength in the Numbers is. It is trying to build the community by sharing knowledge and encouraging people to meet up and connect with the guest mentors. And I similarly feel likewise, having gone on this journey too, that I feel fortunate if I could turn to someone to help me on an issue or something. I mean, that's a very powerful thing to have in your corner, particularly when it's embracing the grey and sort of trying to develop a more sustainable mindset from a community perspective, and actually makes it more fun, that human element, right? I mean, we're in this together. We're not alone.
Exactly. And the other beautiful part of that is when I come into my role at my company every day, I may encounter situations where I've got a question or I want some advice, but I may not want to necessarily talk to my boss about it or one of my peers, because I'm still trying to sort through it and get my head around it. And I might feel it risky to talk to somebody that's in my inner work circle, but having access to that community where it's really kind of a safe space where you can ask the questions that maybe you think are dumb, only to find out they never are. But it can be very empowering to know that you've got this outlet and this space where you're free to learn and to grow without repercussion. And the more that we can lean on each other and build that, again, the more powerful we all can become in our own personal journeys.
I'm just trying to think there. I mean, like, if someone was to sort of start that, I mean, I suppose we're probably further down the track having done that with our various work and interacting with others. But Gaileon, in terms of someone, say, starting on that, and they're brave enough just to take this advice on board and do something with it, what's the first step do you think they could take?
Honestly, when I think about these types of things, the first place I gravitate towards is LinkedIn, because that is such a great place to find experience and folks in your industry and your profession. And honestly, starting to just look for people that where you feel like there could be some synergies, where perhaps there's a mutual benefit that you could have by connecting with one another, and sending an outreach, sending a LinkedIn request. Although I would recommend that you put some context.
Yes.
Just don't send a blanket, blind request. But again, but to me, like, I think that's great. Whenever I get a LinkedIn request that says, I came across your profile, it looks like we have these 3 things in common and we could really help each other by being in the same network. Absolutely. That's exactly what I think this is all about. So I think that's a great place to start. And then I would also suggest looking for local professional associations. So I know there's the Association for Financial Professionals, where they have a number of regional chapters along with the national conferences that they put on, and look for ways to get involved with things like that, because now you're in in a space where you're in a room full of people that do what you do, and you can exchange the business cards and start to build the connections face to face. So I think those are probably the 2 best ways that I have found to build that community and really feel like I've got a whole army of professionals that I could tap into, and likewise, I'm there for them if they ever need it.
Exactly. It's a 2-way process, isn't it? It's you're there for them as much as they're there for you. And actually, I like the way you suggested he started with LinkedIn. But one of the most enjoyable things, being on this journey as well, Gaileon, is actually is when you connect with someone on LinkedIn, say, and then you get the opportunity to meet in person, perhaps at a conference, or if you're traveling with work and you happen to be in the same city, and just catching up for a coffee or a beer or some lunch or something. It's just great. It just makes it a bit more real, and it just increases the bond and the memories, and makes being a finance professional even more fun. It's there's another dimension to our work, is what I'm trying to say there.
Oh, absolutely. And here's where I'm going to sound like that broken record again, because I think there are a lot of people that go into the finance and accounting profession that tend to be more introverted. I put myself in that category. And sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable to send that LinkedIn request to someone that you don't know, or to know that you're traveling to Chicago and to look at your list of connections and find someone that lives there and reach out and suggest that you meet for coffee. It can be really uncomfortable doing that if that's not something that you've grown up doing. But that's where embrace it. It's okay, and just take the leap. and do something to build that connection, and you'll never regret it.
Don't completely. And you know what? I think another thing on that one as well is embrace being an introvert. I mean, if someone sort of says that they're nervous doing it and they're comfortable, but they felt like they really needed to reach out, most people would get that. And respect that as well. So I just encourage people to be themselves. In fact, I think it would actually be to their benefit to say that, yeah, it's a big step for them. And like as someone in a similar boat, Gaileon, like that's another thing, like having these podcasts and to make sure that there's one up every week. It's like this commitment that I have to reach out and talk to people, because if I don't, I'm letting the community down. So, that's another way I sort of look at it as well, is to keep me driving on, is having these commitments to do it. Otherwise I probably wouldn't. I'd go back into my comfort zone behind my desk and keep looking at my spreadsheets. So, but no, look, really appreciate the great advice. And I suppose, if you were to maybe recommend any resources our audience check out that you found useful, what would they be?
So in full disclosure, I'm on the board of directors for the Association for Financial Professionals, just to be clear. And again, it's a nonprofit group that I have been involved with for a number of years and have found so much value in the content and the opportunities to connect. And they've got a number of articles, particularly in the FP&A space, that talk about business partnering, upping your Excel skills, learning more about the new technologies that's coming into the FP&A space. So to me, that is my go-to source for what's the latest, most relevant topic that's impacting FP&A today. So I would highly encourage at least your FP&A audience members to check out that organization.
Definitely, and I will put a link to AFP in the show notes. I actually have to say I do leverage those resources myself. I think what the AFP are doing are great. So keep up the great work, Gaileon, as well with AFP. I think it's awesome stuff.
Well, thank you.
And then I suppose if some of our audience wish to continue the conversation, where's the best place to connect with you? I'm guessing it's LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So we'll put a link to that as well, Gaileon. And as we're sort of wrapping up, would you perhaps have maybe any other parting thoughts for our audience?
I would just say that regardless of where you are in your professional journey, whether you're continuing down the entrenched finance path or considering other opportunities outside, just keep pushing yourself and take those opportunities that might be a little bit uncomfortable, because those are going to be the areas where you're going to grow the most and be able to bring that much more value back to your business partners.
Well, what a great way to finish the podcast, Gaileon. Thank you so much for coming on the show and being a great guest mentor with us today. Thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.